Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final live of 2024, which seems very strange to always say. I'm kind of a little disconcerted that that is the case, that we've got, that we're basically already hitting that time of year. I'm just going to wait and make sure that you people are in here. I'm seeing some chat there. Hey, Denise. Hey, Laura. As always, give me a shout if the sound doesn't sound quite right. Let me know, and I will see what I can do about it. But yeah, I hope you've got some nice Christmas plans, or even if there's nothing special, if it's basically just you with some nice knitting, maybe something nice to drink, whether it be, a nice hot chocolate, a nice whiskey or wine, whatever it might be, but just getting a chance to turn off, switch off from everything around you and just chill out, because that's really what I'm looking forward to about Christmas. It's one of the few times of year here in Ireland that, because all other businesses are shut down, including shipping, for most of the time between Christmas and New Year, it's an actually really true holiday. So I'm very much looking forward to it. A little bit of travel, not too much travel, but a tiny bit of travel over the course of us. Hi, Liz. Hi, Ruth from Omaha. Nice to see you all. We have Irina from Chicago. I just love the international cross of all of the people watching us. Liz, you might be happy to know I've got a couple of Liz's little people. Liz, you might remember last year sent in a Christmas tree with each of these on each side. And this year we've got four more people, where there's two of them here. I believe they're the Dickinson mice, but Liz can let you know what they are if you're curious. They're very cute, and the version she's done are in Nua. And they've got a really solid base, so they sit upright. They're just incredible. Is all I can say. All of this one, I'm hoping will stay there. It's Christmassy, and yeah, it actually, we like them so much that they do just tend to sit upstairs between Christmas and the next Christmas, because you can't put those in a cupboard, right? um, so I hope you've all been doing well with your spree cardigans and that you're making progress. Or if you haven't been knitting much on it, that you know where you're going to go and that you don't have too many questions left to go. Um, I've got a few more ones here. Mel, you're in love with the Duvet Day Sweater. I will talk about that too. I promise, promise, promise. Um, and I'm just seeing, oh yeah, Kimberly saying you love the sweater that popped up in the Ravelry highlights this morning. So I will talk about it. You can see it here and over here. We thought we'd give you kind of a little pre-Christmas surprise and put it on pre-sale early. So the full pattern is not out yet. It's running through the last stages of testing to make sure there's no tweaks, but so far everything's coming through very clean, which is great. But I can tell you a little bit about the story and about the yarn. So you can get a pre-sale now, and also the yarn for it, where the yarn is pre-sale. It's being dyed by Life in the Long Grass. We have a little bit here, but most of it is going to be custom dyed to order, because it's not a yarn they usually stock. So they're bringing it in specifically for us, which is really nice because it's such a unique and interesting yarn. Helen, you love the colors on the new sweater. Yeah, Liz has just popped up there. It's an Alan Dart pattern called Dickinson Mice and Christmas Cheer. But first, I'm going to talk about Chroi, because I know there's people knitting on it and that you're kind of reaching the finish stages. We did answer quite a few of the sizing questions, I think, a little bit last week. The two things I wanted to touch on this week were the sleeves, the length of the sleeves, and also taking a look at some of the little extras, and of course the collar. So the first part with the collar is, it is of course a very, very large collar. You can see when it opens up like this, it is very, very long, and it can be worn like this, where you could actually like wrap it up all the way around like a scarf around your shoulders. You can leave it open as a much more standard shawl collar like this, where it's just got one fold, or the way I've shown that I usually wear it, where I do a double fold, so it becomes a kind of a warm wrap around the neck. The front of it is designed to, when you knit this, what you want is, you want to have it so it fits comfortably over your body, and then 2 inches more. And then the short rows are kind of separate to that, because the short rows aren't going to come down further than here. So if you still want the full width of the body, but you'd also like less short rows or more short rows, then they're independent of each other. You can still knit to the width you need, but then you can adjust the short rows as you're going. So the short rows, you can make it less or you can make it more depending on how wide you want that. So that's a really easy adjustment. The other little extras are the pockets. So I was talking before here, and we've now got on the workshop, you'll find that you would have been enrolled in, you'll find all of the details for the three bits that I thought were a little bit different from this. The first one being the patch pockets that you sew on with mattress stitch. So sometimes people get a little nervous about seaming things on. So I wanted to show you with this how if you do it from the front with mattress stitch, because you're lining it up with garter stitch on both sides, you can get these really, really clean lines as you go along. So it's really, really so it looks really, really tidy, and it doesn't look like it's sewn on after the fact. Like if I pick it up here, you can see that it does. It makes a really big difference when you're seaming it, when you do it that way. And then the other parts, of course, are the tubular bind off, or not tubular bind off, the tubular belt, where we've got a tutorial for that. So it's double knitting, where you start off with half of the stitches, then you double them, and then you do a double knitting where it's like you knit a stitch, then you slip the next stitch, you knit a stitch, and then when you go on the other side, you're doing it the opposite. So when you get up to the top, you can open it out and there's actually two sides. But I had somebody ask me, they said, well, why can't you just knit a tube instead? And the main thing is, if you see this, it is two complete sides. It lays flat and it looks like a belt. Whereas a tube would literally look like a little tube like this. It would be constantly rolling, and it's not going to get that lovely flat belt look. So it obviously you could do it, but it's going to look very different. So I was trying to describe to them that it's even though in theory what you're getting is the same with knitting on both sides, the way they lie is quite different. And if you were curious about it, just doing a little swatch of the double knitting like this, and you'll get a really good idea for how it works, what it looks like, and it's very straightforward to do. So I don't think there will be any benefit to knitting a tube versus knitting this. And then when you finish, you do a tubular bind off, so that you're basically grafting each side together so that it's completely seamless on the second side. Um, Kathleen, you're appreciating the explanation for the belt reasoning. It does make sense. And when somebody was asking me, I had to stop and think about it, because I'm like, they are different, but why are they different? And it's basically, yeah, you can see very clearly that this is flat. It looks like a belt. There's two opposite sides and there's very clear ends on each side. But it's lovely and stretchy, and it lies very flat, and it doesn't curl in any way. So I did find that that was one of the tricky things when measuring it. When you put it down, it actually stretches quite a bit. So I did find that you didn't have to be if you didn't stretch it, you didn't have to be overly generous with the length, because as you put it on, you can see, look, it's got a huge, well, not a huge amount, a good bit of stretch in it, which makes it very easy to tie, so that if it bounces back a bit, it's still going to be fairly straightforward to tie. But when I was judging it, I just put it on and I kept tying it to see how much extra did I want, what did it feel like, and things like that. And then the final little extra is these belt loops, where it's all I'm doing with these. Again, there is a tutorial. I picked up stitches at the bottom of where I wanted my waist to be. I was doing one by one ribbing, and then the top of it, I just bound off. I just seamed the very top of it in place where I wanted the top. So I lay it flat, seamed it down. And I was saying to you last week that if you found that your waist shaping didn't hit in the right place, or maybe you omitted the waist shaping so that it's going straight down, if you want to find where the best place for the location of the belt is, after you've blocked your cardigan, try it on and put the belt around. Take a look at yourself in the mirror and figure out, where does it sit best? Where does it feel comfortable? So that when you put it on, it feels like the natural home for that. And then you can just mark the top and the bottom on each side with stitch markers or with safety pins, so that you can get the location in the right place. So you can, like, obviously in an ideal world, it's exactly where the center of the waist is with your decreases. But if you find that the decreases and the waist shaping didn't hit exactly where you wanted, you can always adjust where the belt is going to be as well. So just keep that in mind. Audrey was saying you like the way double knitting lays flat. It makes for a thicker knit. It does. It's actually it's a lovely, lovely knit for anything where you want to be thicker, laying flat and smoother. It's actually a really, really good option. Just taking a look. Any other questions? Kathleen, the Duvet Day Sweater is calling your name and it looks great with the Cretu. I know this was accidental. I was just saying, it's like, oh, I better show both of them. And I'm like, oh, actually looks kind of cool having the two of them on there together. Kathleen, any hints for those of you doing the shorter, but shorter than the long cardigan, belt or no belt? So if you are doing a slightly shorter cardigan, but not as short as the other one, in terms of a belt, I would actually suggest finishing out the cardigan because you don't have to worry about the belt loops until afterwards. And just getting, like, if you've got like a measuring tape or something like this, tie a measuring tape around and see what it looks like. Basically, does it look well, or is there not enough left underneath so that it looks a little bit odd? Like I have had a jacket that was sat just a little bit below my hips and it did have a belt and it worked okay. But it just, for the other version, if it's the shorter one, I think that you probably won't have enough underneath. So it'll look a little, it won't have enough material sitting at the bottom. But if you're extending it a little bit, but not the whole way around, just put in some other kind of a belt, tie it around and see if you like the way it looks and use that, I think, as the basis of figuring out if it's going to work or not. What color? I'm just looking here, going through. Janice, because you've made the striped sweater, you hope you can make each side of the belt a different color. Yeah, you totally can. I haven't done, the tutorial obviously is not for 2-color double knitting, but 2-color double knitting is no problem. Just look up a tutorial online where you're doing it. You're basically, I mean, effectively what it is on one side you use one color, on the other side you use another color. So it actually would be ideal for your striped sweater to be able to use various different colors in it. It's a really good idea, I think. Yeah. Shannon, you were asking what color was on the model. It's pretty with the cardigan. All right, so I will jump back in. If you've got other questions on Chroi, I will absolutely jump back in. But there's a bunch of stuff being fired at me for Duvet Day, so I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about that as well. But please do fire the Chroi questions around. Oh, the last Chroi part I was going to say is sleeve length and the width. You can see the sleeves are quite wide, which was the design for Chroi. But what can happen with that, particularly after it's blocked, is you have to be careful with length because it's very easy for them to get a little bit too long. So my suggestion was to possibly steam block it before you finished it all the way so that you can check the length, and in case it's grown a little bit, you can make adjustments for that. So it's both the fact that it's a little wider so that it's not going to have the wrist cuff to compensate and hold it in place, and the yoke was a bit deeper, so they're going to be starting a bit further down. So the two of them together means that the sleeves do sit further down your arms as you're wearing them. So Audrey, you think that the Duvet Day Sweater would work great for cruise wear? Oh, it would. The interesting thing about this yarn that, Audrey, you probably remember Barcelona last year when I was at Barcelona Knits is where I picked up the original yarn. I was in All You Knit Is Love and or rather on their stand at the festival, and they had this yarn. It was a brushed alpaca and silk blend, and it was gorgeous. It was like picking up a teddy bear. And because of the fact that it was brushed, the way it absorbed the yarn color was a little bit different. You get much more subtle, more nuanced color in it. And the person running the yarn shop, she actually was wearing a sweater in that yarn. So I looked at it and I walked around and I came back and I'm like, how many skeins do you need to knit a sweater for this? Because it was such a different yarn. It didn't follow normal rules, is the best way I can put it. So the yarn, she said she used 7mm needles and 2 skeins would comfortably fit a size for me. So I picked up 2 skeins. I picked up a pair of 7mm needles and I pretty much started swatching more or less straight away. And this is the very first version I did, which came from there. So this one was the yarn from All You Knit Is Love, and this was a lace weight yarn that I picked up at the festival as well. But they weren't doing wholesale and it wasn't on their website. So I went and I started trying to figure out if I could find a way of replicating the yarn and what we were doing. And we found the yarn base, and Life in the Long Grass very kindly decided to experiment with for us. So they created the same yarn with a series of custom dyes for us. And the best part of all is the contrast color. The contrast color we found was the Cumulus yarn, which is slightly heavier than what I have here, which is better because that was just a little too thin, but it's exactly the same blend as we've got in the main one. It's a brushed alpaca and mohair, but in a lace weight. So basically the idea is it's a top-down sweater, starts with a provisional cast on, you work your way down with a little bit of short rows, come back, do some shaping at the front, and then you join at the underarm. So the body of it, then you've got a little bit of lace work, just it increases and decreases. Then there is drop stitches with the lace pat with yarn, and you come back and you are striping between just a little bit of lace and a little bit of drop stitches. So you use very little of this contrast yarn. So the 25 grams in Cumulus will more than cover each of them. For the sleeves, what we did is picked up the stitches and knit down. You can see I kept it fairly wide, just a little bit of decreases here, and then the same lace pattern down here, and the garter stitch in the edge. So there's something about this yarn, and the feel of it kind of floating around your wrists feels really nice. I don't usually use kind of wider cuffs like this, but it somehow seemed to fit with what we were doing with this. So that's kind of the origin story of this. And it is a very, somebody who say it looks like a fast knit, and it's a very fast knit because of the fact that it's loosely knit, which does take a little bit of getting used to. There's slubs in the yarn, so let me show you. So this is the yarn here. You can see it's got a little bit of slubbiness and looseness. So it means that you have to knit it quite slowly, but because it's knit so loosely, it still knits up pretty fast. So you do need to slow it down a little bit with the knitting, I find. Um, and I pulled a tray up here with a whole bunch of yarn colors. So here are a bunch of the different colors that Life in the Long Grass dyed for us. We've got greens, blues, pinks, kind of a gray color. And this one is mostly cream with little very, very tiny amounts of green on it. So that's the one that I'm wearing, where it's kind of, you can probably see it better in the photographs because this is the one that's photographed where there's teeny little flecks of blue running through it. And I've got a bunch of different contrast colors for the Cumulus here. So you can see how, the fluffiness of this and the alpaca and the silk is going to work really, really well. And we did our best to kind of to pair up the colors that we thought worked well with the main color. If you do think that there's a particular contrast that you'd like together, just pop a note into us, and if we've got it in stock, we can sort it out for you. Um, Irene, with being alpaca and silk, does it grow? It grows a little bit, but not too much, because the thing is, it's so light. It's very, very lightweight, which actually means there's not much weight and much density to it. So it's a little bit like wearing a cloud. It's warm because of the blend and because of the fluffiness, but there's no weight to it at all. It's just kind of weightless is the best way to describe it, which means that you don't get an awful lot of pulling or dragging. Also, the actual sweater is a little on the shorter side. Like the second version, I made it a teeny bit longer, but it means that, it also doesn't have a lot of weight from how much of the volume is it. Shannon, it looks so cozy. It is extremely cozy. Kathleen, you were asking, do I have backers on the Chroi toggles? I do not. I've just put the Chroi toggles on as they were. I didn't really have any problem with them pulling out, to be honest with you. I did take care when I was putting them on to do plenty to hold it up with a I used a double pointed needle, just a small one to pick it up, but anything that will hold the toggle and knittle up. So then I was able to wrap the yarn and give it plenty of length to put on. But I haven't had any problems with them. They don't seem to be drooping off too much, so they did seem to be okay. It's not a heavy wood though, so it means that it doesn't have a great deal of weight to it. Um, Helen, you liked it with the roll neck underneath. I know, because it's cold here, so I'm not going to take off and have an open neck, but I quite like, yeah, I do. Because originally I'm doing everything in reverse because I'm looking at it in the camera. So my right's my left, so it's very confusing. But yeah, so like you can do it like this. I left it fairly open. You could obviously make it with a little bit more enclosed as well if you wanted to, or even when you were doing it, have less stitches in the back or have a less of a scoop here. So that's fairly modifiable as you're going through as well. Monica, you tested and you think it only took a week. Oh, that's really good. I love the idea that it only took a week. It was a very fast knit, and I actually knit the second one as well, which I rarely do, but I wanted to knit it. It's very enjoyable running through your fingers. It feels very soft. Kathleen, you love the details on the sleeves. So many designer ignore sleeve details. Oh, sleeve details are where it's at, particularly with this. It felt like it would have felt very plain if you only had that detail here and you didn't have anything over here. The sleeves would have felt kind of orphaned, I think, without having something going on there. Are you noticing some color areas in the main color on the sample setter under the Chroi? What is that? I'm not sure what you mean, some color areas in the main color. Oh, this one here. This is the original sweater that I knit. So it was hand dyed. So yes, there's a lot more. There's a lot more speckling on this because that was the original yarn. I'll stand up here and show you. Um, my version is the Life in the Long Grass one, which is in the photographs. So this doesn't have speckling, but I do have a darker top underneath in it because it's lightweight and a light color. You will see darker colors underneath it with this. In the photographs, I had white underneath, so you're not going to get the same degree of show through. I'm not sure if that is what you meant. What about the neckline pulling down? The neckline on it, I've got an I-cord bind off going around it, which does help to stabilize it. So you can see that, let me stretch this. The I-cord bind off tends to hold it in place quite a bit. If you're worried about it stretching out a little bit, what you can do is you could drop down needle size and you can also pick up less stitches. So I-cord is particularly good for stabilizing necklines. It tends to hold things quite firmly. It's got a bit of durability. And so like what I did the first time I did this, when I was practicing it, I thought I was going to have a more filled in neck. So I was using some of the contrast color and I picked it up and I was doing an edging and I really didn't like the way it looked. So that's why I went back and decided to just do a very simple I-cord edging. I thought that it worked better with the project. But in terms of how open it is, you can vary that quite a bit with how many stitches you pick up and your needle size, I think, as you're going through, because it gives you but the I-cord does give you a decent amount of firmness to hold it in. Um, Irina, did I answer your question in relation to the color and the sample showing through? Because I'm not 100% certain if that's what you were asking. So, so on the website, we've got the pattern, obviously, as usual, if you just want the pattern by itself. If you want the workshop, there is a workshop available on there. Remember, you don't need to get the pattern if you get the workshop because it will be included. And then the yarn kits are separate. So it means if you get the yarn kit, you'll need to buy either the pattern or the workshop to go with it. Because very often we find that people end up opting to get the pattern perhaps in Ravelry instead, or it gives you choices basically. Or if you end up getting a couple of yarn kits, you're not buying the pattern twice that way as well. Helen, you learned so much from watching your YouTube videos. You've been knitting for years. I'm delighted to hear that. Yes. I mean, that's what I can never get over about knitting is the reality that you can be knitting for a very long time and you will always learn something new. And I think actually anything that has got layers of complexity to it, that's going to be the case, is that you can take it on a surface level and you can perhaps always knit the same thing, always use the same cast on, always use the same bind off. And your knitting is just fine. It's very functional. Your end products come out well. but you're not necessarily expanding your skills all the time. But if you want to use it as a way of both knitting beautiful things, but also continually learning, there's a lot of opportunity in knitting with that. Once you're open to it and you're looking for those interesting things, it's there. You just have to look out for it. Now, I do want to give a shout out as well to anybody on here. If you're from Canada, I know we just realized that your Canadian postal strike is now over, which is phenomenal. We're very, very happy about that. Um, and originally, we actually had on our website, I took off the postal options to Canada, so it was left with just FedEx because that was the only way I knew it could get there. But as of today, we have just turned the postal options on. Now we will hold off posting anything to Canada before the new year because I know there's a backlog going, so it's much safer just to hang on, and we'll ship when we're back on January the 2nd. We'll begin shipping out again. I know there's a couple of packages that people have gotten from Canada that it went out in that limbo period where you could still ship, but the strike had actually started. So I hope that you'll all get them very shortly. So yeah, I'm delighted that that got finished for you before Christmas. Um, I'm just looking here. We've got, oh, Maureen, you wanted Maureen Lynch, you will today's prize. Congratulations. Let me know if you want the Duvet Day workshop, or if you've got it already, then we can absolutely swap it for a different one as well. So just send us on an email and we will get that sorted for you. Um, just checking. Is there any other questions we've got out there before we finish up for our Christmas break? I'm very curious. I'm all ears. And I do hope you all enjoy your Christmas and have some fun knitting plans ahead of you. Um, I have got the blanket. I've got a blanket I'm working on, and I think I've reached a point where there's lots of knitting, but not too much thinking. That's my goal, to reach a knitting and no thinking stage. Is what I'm hoping to get to. So I think I might be there, which should give me lots of good stuff to knit on over the Christmas. So I'm wishing you all a very happy Christmas and see you all in the new year. Bye.